Welcome, dear brave listeners. You're tuning in to Laviña podcast, and I'm truly grateful you're here. Today, I'll share with you a short story filled with mystery, fear, and questions. The story is entitled Pare, Lucio. Corn was ripening in the clearings of Tangay. The wind from the southwest was heavy with the sweet odor of the fields. Crows flew about, crying riotously in the sunshine. Parrots swooped cleverly upon the corn. On such a day as this, a woman was found murdered in a thicket not far from the main road to the Canyons. The body was identified as that of the old maid Maria, who was last seen at Pare Lucio's. That had been a week before, and some said the two had a quarrel over some old debt. The wind over the cornfields became no less fragrant with the scent of harvest. The parrots suddenly left, and the crows roosted ominously atop the old leafless cap of trees. Tai, who was sergeant and acting chief of police of Mansalay, came promptly, clad in a faded khaki shirt, his badge pinned over his left breast pocket. He had brought his pistol too, and it now hung from his hip along with a wooden club. He was no expert at using either of these weapons. The municipality had always been too poor to afford cartridges for the policeman, and so Tai seldom could practice with his gun. Everyone, though, was peace-loving, and there had never been any need for him to wield even the wooden club. He started to quiz every villager, but to no avail. Meanwhile, the body was fast decomposing and it had to be buried without further delay. Tai ordered a grave dug right in the thicket and had every villager help with the pick and the shovel. Almost every man in Tangay came except Pare Lucio. Tai took mental note of this and, shortly after the burial, hurried over Pare Lucio's house a little way up the main road and arrested him. "But I am innocent," protested Pare Lucio, who was about 50. "How could an old man ever do such a deed?" "Well, you were the last man seen with a woman. May she rest in peace, no?" Pare Lucio did not answer, and Tai continued. "She was passing down the road 5 days ago when you saw her and demanded to know why she hadn't paid you an old debt of 7 cabans of palay. That was what you charged her for the 6 yards of cotton cloth you sold her 2 years ago when you were still a cloth peddler, no?" The sergeant noticed that Pare Lucio was struck by how he knew about him. "You followed her down the road and the two of you exchanged harsh words, no?" No answer. It seemed Pare Lucio was too frightened to open his mouth. The sergeant's eyes roved about the wall of the hut. He saw a bolo hanging in its sheath from the wall. "Ah, there's the bolo. You had it with you, no?" he said, walking across the room to where the bolo was. He pulled it out of its sheath and scrutinized the blade. Thinking he saw bloodstains, he grinned, put the bolo back into its sheath, and then tucked the weapon under his arm. "Now, Pare Lucio," he said, "let us go to Mansalay. You have murdered a woman. Let us go and find out what to do about you." "But I'm innocent, Sargento," cried Pare Lucio. "I've been ill of malaria. It has been 7 days now. I have not even gone out of this house. True, that old maid Maria owed me for some rice, but she had said months ago that she will pay me in corn this harvest, and we had agreed." Tai did not seem to be listening, and so Pare Lucio repeated, "I've been ill 7 days now, and my wife, she's out in the fields this morning. Killed a chicken and made broth for me only the other day. That's why there are blood stains in my bolo." "Ah, you lie! Let us go to Mansalai and settle it before the justice of the feast," said Tai, grinning still, as though much pleased with the world. "I've no patience with an aged liar and murderer like you." So saying, he took Pare Lucio by the arm and shoved him out of the door of his hut. The old man stumbled over the threshold. The sergeant was about 35, well-built and strong. He had a narrow forehead and a flat nose. Pare Lucio was not only many years older, but he had the stoop of most cloth peddlers. It was said that in his youth, he had been a rustler and an discriminator or fencer. But years of tramping the hills selling cloth, exposure, and poor fare had sapped his vitality. It had not seemed surprising that he had taken a youthful but stout and hard-working woman, Torena, for his wife. Pare Lucio and the sergeant had gone but a few meters from the hut when Torena arrived from the cornfield with an empty basket on her head and coil of rope in her hand. "Ah, Lucio!" she cried. "The crows are back in the cornfield and our carabao is lost again." But Lucio did not hear her. Tai broke them apart when Torena ran to Pare Lucio and embraced him. Looking away, Pare Lucio half cried like a child and said, "But I'm innocent!" Repeatedly, Torena sprang back to her husband and clung to him, and the sergeant got tired trying to break them apart. "We are going to Mansalai, see? I've no patience with husbands and wives like you two, especially when I have to bring the man to justice, see?" he said. Torena had flung her basket and coil of rope to the ground, and the sergeant, noticing the rope, picked it up and began tying Pare Lucio's elbows behind his back. "My rope!" cried Torena angrily. "You're stealing my rope!" But the sergeant paid no attention to her. "Now we'll be off," he said coolly, "and follow if you're a good wife." A thick stand of tall bushes hemmed in the road and leaving the clearings. They saw nothing more of Torena. They passed a cluster of huts along the main road, and the dogs barked and the children ran out to look at them. At length they came to the beach where the road turned in the direction of Baclasan and Duasig and ended 16 kilometers away in Mansalai. It was mid-morning and the sun cast two long shadows on the beach as the sergeant and Pare Lucio walked on. Even the rope by which he led the old man had also a shadow. At Baclasan, fishermen were mending their nets when the two passed by. Tai tethered Pare Lucio to one of the posts where the nets hung and said to the fisherman, "Hey, we come from the Ngai and have not had breakfast yet. You have some boiled fish and boiled rice?" The fisherman gaped at the sergeant and his companion bound in strong hemp rope. It seemed the sight of a person in that continued fascinated them. The sergeant said, "We are on our way to Mansalai to the west. This man, he appears to have murdered an old maid. See?" The meal over, Tai bound his prisoner's arm once more, and they continued on their way. It was a long hike to the next village, Wasig, and they were delayed by the high tide at the river. Torena had followed and overtook them there. She had food with her, a blanket and a shirt and a pair of trousers for Pare Lucio. Tai did not at all relish her company. He tried to walk as fast as he could, tugging at the rope to make Pare Lucio hurry. But Torena would not be left behind. She was right beside the old man, and when the going was hard, she would demand a halt. Then she and Pare Lucio would rest under a tree, and she would wipe the sweat from his wrinkled face. "Ah, I have no patience with you," the sergeants would remark. "Come on, let's go." Now Torena still had some food with her, and for this Tai was secretly thankful. But eating meant that he would have to free Pare Lucio's two hands, for this was what the woman demanded. He pondered a while. Then, finally, they arrived at Mansalay. It was still so early that a policeman yawning on the porch of the municipal building, surprised at seeing the sergeant and his party, began to rub his eyes. "This man, he murdered an old maid in Dangay. We have room for him in the jail, no?" The policeman nodded, then led the sergeant and Pare Lucio to the jail. It was a smallish building made of bamboo. When the policeman threw open the door and the sergeant shoved Pare Lucio in, Serena, who had followed them, turned her face away. Pare Lucio stared about inside the jail like a caged parakeet. "But I'm innocent! I'm innocent!" he cried, louder than ever. The sergeant had not yet unloosened the rope with which he had bound Pare Lucio. He had one end of it still in his hands and didn't know what to do with it at first. Seeing a post nearby, he at length decided to tie the end of the rope there. At the other end, Pare Lucio was becoming hoarse from shouting. "Ah! I have no patience with you!" Tai shouted back with a grin as he walked away.